the most important question ever asked about lost human history. The question was simple, almost childlike in its innocence. Yet when Dr. Rebecca Martinez asked it during a routine excavation in Turkey, it would unravel everything we thought we knew about human civilization. Why did they all start at the same time? Her colleagues paused, trowels hovering over ancient stone. The question hung in the dusty air of Göbekli Tepe, that mysterious 11,600-year-old temple complex that shouldn't exist. Not according to conventional history, anyway. Hunter-gatherers weren't supposed to build monuments. They were supposed to be too busy surviving. But Rebecca's question cut deeper. She wasn't just asking about one anomalous site. She was asking about all of them. Every single cradle of civilization. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, Mesoamerica, the Andes, each one erupting with sophisticated culture, agriculture, mathematics, and monumental architecture within a relatively narrow window of time. Why? It was the most important question ever asked about lost human history because it forced us to confront a pattern we'd been carefully ignoring. The pattern nobody wanted to see. For over a century, archaeologists cataloged the rise of civilization as separate, independent events. The Sumerians developed writing around 3,400 BCE. The Egyptians built pyramids around 2,600 BCE. The Indus Valley flourished around 2,500 BCE with sophisticated urban planning. The Chinese established complex societies along the Yellow River around 2000 BCE. The Maya constructed ceremonial centers around the same period, while Peruvian cultures built massive complexes. Each civilization was treated as its own story, its own triumph of human ingenuity emerging from prehistory. This was the comfortable narrative. Humanity wandered in darkness for 200,000 years. Then suddenly, light appeared in several places. Progress, evolution, the inevitable march of development. But when you plotted them on a timeline, something disturbing emerged. They weren't scattered randomly. They were clustered, bunched together in a way that defied the odds of independent development. Dr. Marcus Webb, a statistical archaeologist at Cambridge, ran the numbers after Rebecca's question reached him. He treated civilization emergence as a random distribution problem. If these cultures developed independently, truly isolated from each other, their emergence should follow a Poisson distribution across 200,000 years of modern human existence. They weren't spread out at all. The probability of this clustering occurring by chance is approximately 0.003%. Marcus calculated. In statistical terms, that's a smoking gun. He published his findings in Nature, expecting fierce criticism. Instead, he found silence. Many colleagues simply chose not to engage. It was easier to ignore the pattern than confront what it might mean. The memory keeper. To understand what the smoking gun pointed to, we need Ahmed al-Hashimi, an elderly linguist in Cairo who spent 40 years studying flood myths. Every culture has them. The biblical Noah, the Mesopotamian Gilgamesh, the Greek Deucalion, the Hindu Manu, the Aztec Nada, Aboriginal Australian stories, the Chinese Gunyu. They're not just similar, Ahmed explained, spreading out a world map covered in pushpins. They're identical in structure. A divine warning, a chosen survivor, an ark or boat, animals or seeds saved, landing on a mountain, a rainbow or dove as a sign, a new beginning for humanity. Folklore scholars dismiss these parallels as coincidence or cultural diffusion. But Ahmed found something else. He analyzed the mathematical precision embedded in these myths. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the ark's dimensions are 120 cubits per side. That's a perfect cube. The volume is 1,728,000 cubic cubits. That factors into 12 superscript 3 times 1,000. The Babylonians used base 60 mathematics. But here's what's extraordinary. This same mathematical signature appears in flood myth from cultures that supposedly never had contact. The Chinese flood myth describes use measurements using a system that produces the same base, 60 relationships. The Hindu Matsya Purana describes Manu's boat using dimensions that resolve to similar patterns. These aren't just stories, Ahmed insisted. They're data, encoded data. Someone was trying to preserve information across the apocalypse. They knew writing might not survive, buildings would crumble, cities would be swallowed. But stories embedded with memorable mathematical patterns, those might make it through. The geological witness. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison didn't believe in flood myths. She believed in ice cores, sediment layers, and isotope analysis. As a paleoclimatologist at the University of Toronto, she dealt in hard data, not folklore. But the data told a disturbing story. Between 11,600 and 11,700 years ago, something catastrophic happened to Earth's climate, she explained, gesturing to a graph that looked like a cliff edge. We call it the Younger Dryas termination. Global temperatures rose by 10 degrees Celsius in less than a decade. Some ice cores from Greenland suggest the change happened in as little as 3 years. The implications were staggering. Massive ice sheets that had covered North America and Northern Europe for 100,000 years melted in the geological equivalent of an eye blink. Sea levels rose by 400 feet. Coastal areas where humans had lived for millennia were drowned. We estimate that approximately 25 million square kilometers of habitable land was flooded. Elizabeth continued. That's roughly the size of North America. During the Ice Age, with sea levels 400 feet lower, the coastlines were the most desirable real estate. Moderate climate, access to marine resources, river outlets. If there was an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization, that's where it would have been. She pulled up another chart. We found evidence of massive flooding events in the Black Sea around 5,600 BCE when the Mediterranean breached and filled it. Evidence of catastrophic flooding in the Persian Gulf. Underwater structures off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Mediterranean that predate known civilizations. Her next statement made headlines. We found something else. In sediment cores from 63 locations worldwide, we found a layer dated to approximately 11,600 years ago containing nanometer-sized diamonds, platinum anomalies, and high-temperature glass spherules. The signature is consistent with either an extraterrestrial impact or an airburst event, possibly multiple impacts. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis was gaining ground. Something had hit Earth, and it had reset everything. The knowledge carriers. If a pre-existing civilization was destroyed around 11,600 years ago, how did knowledge survive to seed later civilizations? Enter the Mesopotamian Apku, the 7 sages who appeared after the flood to teach humanity civilization. The Egyptian Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus who preserved wisdom from before the flood. The Hindu Saptarishi, the 7 sages who carried knowledge through the deluge. The Mesoamerican Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl, bearded teachers who brought agriculture and astronomy. Every major civilization has a story of culture bringers, noted Dr. James Whitmore, an anthropologist at Oxford. They're depicted as coming from across the sea or from a destroyed homeland. They teach the survivors agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, and architecture. Then they leave, or die, or ascend to heaven. What if these weren't myths? What if scattered survivors of an advanced civilization, facing a destroyed world, deliberately spread out across the globe? They would seek out other human populations, tribes that had survived by being inland, away from catastrophic coastal flooding. They would teach, share knowledge, help bootstrap new civilizations. It would explain the clustering. Marcus Webb noted, if you have a relatively small number of knowledge carriers spreading out from a common origin point, trying to preserve and transmit crucial information, they would naturally seed civilizations within a relatively short time window. A few thousand years is nothing in archaeological terms. This hypothesis also explains why so many ancient cultures share similar mythological themes. The Seven Sages, the Flood, the Lost Golden Age, the culture heroes who came from the sea. These weren't independent inventions. They were different versions of the same historical event, preserved in the collective memory of humanity. The encoded blueprint. Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from archaeoastronomy. Dr. David Patel at the University of Melbourne made a startling discovery while studying ancient monuments. We've known for years that the Great Pyramid of Giza encodes mathematical constants. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is 2 pi. The structure incorporates the golden ratio. Its mass multiplied by 1/0 approximates the mass of Earth. But David found something else. When you compare the layouts of ancient sites worldwide, Giza, Angkor Wat, Teotihuacan, Easter Island, Tiwanaku, they form a pattern. Not a random scatter, but a geometric relationship. They're positioned at locations that encode specific latitudes and longitudes using precise mathematical relationships. He pulled up a global projection. The Great Pyramid sits at 29.9792 degrees north. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. Angkor Wat is positioned at 13.4127 degrees north. Multiply by 10,000 and you get the radius of the sun in miles. These can't be coincidences. More than specific locations, David found evidence of a shared knowledge system. All major ancient civilizations used sophisticated astronomy. They tracked precession, the 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis. They encoded this knowledge in their monuments and myths. The Egyptian and Hindu texts specifically reference constellation positions from around 10,500 BCE, not from when the texts were supposedly written. Why would they preserve astronomical data from 8,000 years before their time? His conclusion: they were maintaining records from a previous epoch, keeping the knowledge alive. The precision is astounding. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter divided by twice its height gives pi to several decimal places. The structure's orientation is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60th of a single degree. The internal passages align with specific stars as they appeared in 10,500 BCE, not 2,600 BCE when the pyramid was supposedly built. Similar precision appears worldwide. Angkor Wat's dimensions encode the cycles of Hindu cosmology. Teotihuacan's layout mirrors the solar system. The Nazca lines in Peru, visible only from the air, stretch for miles with geometric precision. Easter Island's Moai statues align with astronomical events. This isn't coincidence, David emphasized. This is intentional encoding of sophisticated knowledge. They were building time capsules, monuments that would last millennia and carry information forward. The question's answer. So what's the answer to Rebecca Martinez's question? Why did civilizations all start at the same time? The evidence points to a scenario that fits the data better than random independent development. Around 11,600 years ago, Earth experienced a catastrophic event, likely a comet impact or airburst. This triggered rapid climate change, catastrophic flooding, and megafauna extinction. An existing human civilization, concentrated in coastal areas now underwater, was largely destroyed. But some survived. People who possessed advanced knowledge made it through. These survivors, recognizing the fragility of civilization, deliberately sought out other human populations and began teaching them. It's actually the most logical explanation, argued Rebecca in a paper cited over 10,000 times. We know humans existed for 200,000 years before civilization supposedly began. We know humans were behaviorally and intellectually modern for at least 50,000 years. The idea that for 95% of human existence, nobody figured out agriculture or mathematics, and then suddenly 6 different cultures independently developed it all at once, strains credulity. What makes more sense is that we did figure it out, probably multiple times over 200,000 years. But most of those experiments were erased by time, by climate change, by rising seas, or by cataclysms we haven't discovered yet. The civilizations we know about, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, aren't the first. They're just the first ones that survived long enough for us to find them. This explains not just the clustering of civilization emergence, but also the sudden appearance of sophisticated knowledge. Agriculture didn't slowly develop over millennia. It appeared rapidly, with domestication of multiple plant species happening within a few thousand years across different continents. Writing systems emerged independently in multiple locations within a narrow time frame. Monumental architecture appeared suddenly, with no clear progression from simple to complex. The knowledge was already there. It was being transmitted by the survivors of the previous world. The implications. If this hypothesis is correct, it rewrites human history. It suggests we're much older than we think, that human ingenuity and sophistication go back much further than 5,000 years, that the story of civilization isn't linear progress from caves to cities, but rather a cycle of rise and fall, of knowledge won and lost and won again. It also carries a warning. The geological record shows that Earth has been hit by major catastrophes regularly throughout its history. Elizabeth Morrison noted. Impacts, supervolcano eruptions, rapid climate shifts. We've been lucky for the past 11,600 years. We've had a stable, warm climate that allowed civilization to flourish. But that stability is an anomaly in Earth's history. The ancient knowledge keepers understood this. Their monuments, myths, and mathematical encodings weren't just records. They were warnings, instructions, a message to future humans. This has happened before. It will happen again. Preserve knowledge. Remember, consider the implications for our own civilization. We store most of our knowledge digitally, on servers that require constant power. Our cities cluster on coastlines vulnerable to rising seas. We've built a just-in-time global supply chain with no redundancy. A major catastrophe, whether asteroid impact, supervolcano eruption, solar flare, or pandemic, could send us backward technologically within a generation. The ancients built in stone. They encoded knowledge in monuments designed to last tens of thousands of years. They created myths that would survive the death of languages and the fall of empires. They understood that civilization is fragile, that knowledge must be preserved redundantly, that we must always be planning for the next catastrophe. The search continues. Today, archaeologists are searching ocean floors with new urgency. Advanced sonar and submarine technology have revealed structures off the coasts of Japan, India, Cuba, and the Mediterranean that may predate the Ice Age's end. Satellite imagery has identified geometric patterns in the Amazon, the Sahara, and under Antarctic ice, suggesting large-scale human modification. The search isn't just academic. If an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization existed, finding its remains could revolutionize our understanding of human potential. Their solutions to engineering, agriculture, or social organization could have modern applications. Their astronomical knowledge might reveal patterns we've missed. But more importantly, understanding what destroyed them could help us avoid the same fate. The evidence keeps mounting. Underwater pyramids off the coast of Cuba, the Yanagani Monument off Japan, with right angles and terrace structures, the submerged city of Dvarka off India, matching descriptions from ancient texts. LiDAR revealing vast cities hidden under jungle canopy in Central America. Ground-penetrating radar finding chambers and tunnels beneath the Sphinx, older than the accepted timeline. Each discovery raises more questions. How advanced were they? What did they know? Why did they encode their knowledge so carefully? What were they trying to tell us? Rebecca Martinez, standing once again at Göbekli Tepe, looked out over the ancient stones arranged with mathematical precision by people who supposedly didn't have mathematics. The most important question ever asked about lost human history isn't, was there a lost civilization? The real question is, what did they know that we've forgotten? That question remains incompletely answered. But every excavation, every underwater survey, every ancient text decoded brings us closer to hearing the voices of those who came before. The knowledge keepers who looked at a destroyed world and decided that humanity deserved another chance. They encoded their message in stone and myth and mathematics, hoping someday we would be wise enough to read it. That someday is now. And the message is clear. Remember, learn, survive, because you're not the first, and if you're not careful, you might not be the last. The cycle has repeated before. It will repeat again. The question is whether we'll be ready when it does.